Our Ghost Party by Jerome K. Jerome. This witty essay on Christmas ghosts served as Jerome's introduction to his collection of humorous tales told after supper, 1891, written shortly after his classic work, Three Men in a Boat. It was Christmas Eve. I begin this way because it is the proper, orthodox, respectable way to begin. And I have been brought up in a proper, orthodox, respectable way, and taught to always do the proper, orthodox, respectable thing, and the habit clings to me. Of course, as a mere matter of information, it is quite unnecessary to mention the date at all. The experienced reader knows it was Christmas Eve without my telling him. It always is Christmas Eve in a ghost story. Christmas Eve is the ghosts' great gala night. On Christmas Eve, they hold their annual fete. On Christmas Eve, everybody in Ghostland who is anybody, or rather, speaking of ghosts, one should say, I suppose every nobody who is any nobody, comes out to show himself or herself, to see and to be seen, to promenade about and display their winding sheets and grave cloths to each other, to criticize one another's style and sneer at one another's complexion. Christmas Eve parade, as I expect they themselves term it, is a function, doubtless, eagerly prepared for and looked forward to throughout Ghostland, especially by the swagger set, such as the murdered barons, the crime-stained countesses, and the earls who came over with the conqueror, and assassinated their relatives, and died raving mad. Hollow moans and fiendish grins are, one may be sure, energetically practiced up. Blood-curdling shrieks and marrow-freezing gestures are probably rehearsed for weeks beforehand. Rusty chains and gory daggers are overhauled and put into good working order, and sheets and shrouds, laid carefully by from the previous year's show, are taken down and shaken out and mended and aired. Oh, it is a stirring night in Ghostland, the night of December the 24th. Ghosts never come out on Christmas night itself, you may have noticed. Christmas Eve, we suspect, has been too much for them. They are not used to excitement. For about a week after Christmas Eve, the gentlemen ghosts, no doubt, feel as if they were all head, and go about making solemn resolutions to themselves that they will stop in next Christmas Eve, while the lady spectres are contradictory and snappish, and liable to burst into tears and leave the room hurriedly on being spoken to for no perceptible cause whatsoever. Ghosts with no position to maintain, mere middle-class ghosts, occasionally, I believe, do a little haunting on off nights, on All Hallows Eve, and at Midsummer, and some will even run up for a mere local event to celebrate, for instance, the anniversary of the hanging of somebody's grandfather, or to prophesy a misfortune. He does love prophesying misfortune, does the average British ghost. Send him out to prognosticate trouble to somebody, and he is happy. Let him force his way into a peaceful home and turn the whole house upside down by foretelling a funeral, or predicting a bankruptcy, or hinting at a coming disgrace, or some other terrible disaster, about which nobody in their senses would want to know sooner than they could possibly help, and the prior knowledge of which can serve no useful purpose whatsoever, and he feels that he is combining duty with pleasure. He would never forgive himself if anybody in his family had a trouble and he had not been there for a couple of months beforehand, doing silly tricks on the lawn, or balancing himself on somebody's bed rail. Then there are, besides, the very young, or very conscientious ghosts, with a lost will or an undiscovered number weighing heavy on their minds, who will haunt steadily all the year round, and also the fussy ghost, who is indignant and having been buried in the dustbin or in the village pond, and who never gives the parish a single night's quiet until somebody has paid for a first-class funeral for him. But these are the exceptions. As I have said, the average orthodox ghost does his one turn a year on Christmas Eve and is satisfied. Why on Christmas Eve, of all nights in the year, I never could myself understand. It is invariably one of the most dismal of nights to be out in, cold, muddy, and wet. And besides, at Christmas time, everybody has quite enough to put up with in the way of a house full of living relations without wanting the ghosts of any dead ones mooning about the place, I am sure. There must be something ghostly in the air of Christmas, something about the close, muggy atmosphere that draws up the ghosts, like the dampness of the summer rains bring out the frogs and snails. And not only do the ghosts themselves always walk on Christmas Eve, but live people always sit and talk about them on Christmas Eve. Whenever 5 or 6 English-speaking people meet round a fire on Christmas Eve, they start telling each other ghost stories. Nothing satisfies us on Christmas Eve but to hear each other tell authentic anecdotes about specters. It is a genial, festive season, and we love to muse upon graves and dead bodies and murders and blood. There is a good deal of similarity about our ghostly experiences, but this, of course, is not our fault, but the fault of the ghosts, who never will try any new performance, but always will keep steadily to the old, safe business. The consequence is that when you have been at one Christmas Eve party and heard 6 people relate their adventures with spirits, you do not require to hear any more ghost stories. To listen to any further ghost stories after that would be like sitting out 2 farcical comedies or taking in 2 comic journals. The repetition would become wearisome. There was always the young man who was one year spending the Christmas at the country house, and on Christmas Eve they put him to sleep in the west wing. Then in the middle of the night the room door quietly opens and somebody, generally a lady in her nightdress, walks slowly in and comes and sits on the bed. The young man thinks it must be one of the visitors or some relative of the family, though he does not remember having previously seen her, who, unable to go to sleep and feeling lonesome all by herself, has come into his room for a chat. He had no idea it is a ghost. He is so unsuspicious. She does not speak, however, and when he looks again, she is gone. The young man relates the circumstances at breakfast table next morning and asks each of the ladies present if it were she who was his visitor. But they all assure him that it was not, and the host, who has grown deadly pale, begs him to say no more about the matter, which strikes the young man as a singular strange request. After breakfast, the host takes the young man into a corner and explains to him that what he saw was the ghost of a lady who had been murdered in that very bed, or who had murdered somebody else there. It does not really matter which. You can be a ghost by murdering somebody else or by being murdered yourself, whichever you prefer. The murdered ghost is perhaps the most popular, but on the other hand, you can frighten people better if you are the murdered one, because then you can show your wounds and do groans. Then there is the skeptical guest. It's always the guest who gets let in for this sort of thing, by the by. A ghost never thinks much of his own family. It is the guest he likes to haunt who, after listening to the host's ghost stories on Christmas Eve, laughs at it and says that he does not believe there are such things as ghosts at all, and that he will sleep in the haunted chamber that very night if they will let him. Everybody urges him not to be reckless, but he persists in his foolhardiness and goes up to the yellow chamber, or whatever color the haunted room may be, with a light heart and a candle, and wishes them all good night and shuts the door. Next morning he has got snow-white hair. He does not tell anybody what he has seen. It's too awful. There is also the plucky guest who sees a ghost and knows it is a ghost and watches it as it comes into the room and disappears through the wainscot, after which, as the ghost does not seem to be coming back and there is nothing consequently to be gained by stopping awake, he goes to sleep. He does not mention having seen the ghost to anybody, for fear of frightening them. Some people are so nervous about ghosts, but he determines to wait for the next night and see if the apparition appears again. It does appear again, and this time he gets out of bed, dresses himself, and does his hair, and follows it, and then discovers a secret passage leading from the bedroom down into the beer cellar, a passage which no doubt was not unfrequently made use of in the bad old days of yore. After him comes the young man who woke up with a strange sensation in the middle of the night and found his rich bachelor uncle standing by his bedside. The rich uncle smiled a weird sort of smile and vanished. The young man immediately got up and looked at his watch. It had stopped at 4:30, he having forgotten to wind it. He made inquiries the next day and found that, strangely enough, his rich uncle, whose only nephew he was, had married a widow with 11 children at exactly 11:45 only 2 days ago. The young man does not attempt to explain the extraordinary circumstance. All he does is to vouch for the truth of his narrative. And to mention another case, there is the gentleman who is returning home late at night from a Freemasons' dinner, and who, noticing a light issuing from a ruined abbey, creeps up and looks through the keyhole. He sees the ghost of a gray sister kiss the ghost of a brown monk, and is so inexpressibly shocked and frightened that he faints on the spot, and is discovered there the next morning, lying in a heap against the door, still speechless, and with his faithful latchkey clasped tightly in his hand. All these things happen on Christmas Eve. They are all told of on Christmas Eve. For ghost stories to be told on any other evening than the evening of the 24th of December would be impossible in English society as a present regulated.